The internet looks like air to you, but it has a body, thin strands made of glass, lines stretched across the ocean floor, and the nervous system of the global economy runs through those lines. Today, the most invisible infrastructure supporting global internet traffic is submarine telecommunications cables. The ITU says this plainly. About 99% of the world's internet traffic is carried through these cables, and as of 2024, there are more than 500 active and planned systems. So, controlling the internet doesn't always mean controlling social media. Sometimes it simply means shaping where the flow goes. And this is the quietest, but most real, front of the US-China rivalry: cable routes, coastal landing stations, permits, and security reviews. On this front, there are no sounds, no explosions. But when a cable line goes down, banking transactions, cloud services, government communications, and video platforms are all forced, at the same time, to run to another route. The critical services the ITU highlights pass through here. Now look at the map. The cable is strongest in the deep ocean because there are no people there. Its most vulnerable points are near the coast: ports, shipping lanes, shallow waters, fishing zones, and the landing stations where the cable comes ashore. A landing station is usually a quiet building inside a fenced area on the coastline. That is where the ocean cable connects to terrestrial networks. And then the questions begin. Who built it? Who financed it? Who maintains it? Who can enter? Who can legally demand access? These are no longer technical details, they are national security questions. That is why some cable projects are shaped not only by market rules, but by state decisions. One of the clearest examples is what happened along the Team Telecom and FCC line. In 2020, a U.S. Department of Justice statement said Team Telecom did not view approval of the Pacific Light Cable Network System's Hong Kong landing as acceptable from a national security perspective. The text itself included arguments such as traffic detouring through Hong Kong and treating that as a risk. That means the competition is not built around breaking the cable itself. The competition determines where the cable lands, which city becomes a hub, which region gets faster and cheaper connectivity, which route is considered trusted. Now, there is a new turn in this process. Cables are no longer just the telecom company's game. In recent years, major cloud and platform companies have become investors and even owners of cable systems. CSIS describes this trend in strategic context. Giants like AWS, Google, Microsoft, and Meta actively invest in new systems. This change is not just an economic fact, because the question who has a stake in the cable becomes, in a crisis, the question who gets priority, which traffic goes where, which region gets more capacity, which direction gets restored faster. European institutional analysis also makes this explicit. Cables are the physical layer of geopolitics and carry almost all intercontinental traffic. Now to the most critical part. A cut is not always sabotage, but its impact is always geopolitical. In 2024, damage to several key cables in the Red Sea caused connectivity problems across regions. AP wrote that, according to expert assessments, the incident was most likely explained by a commercial ship dragging its anchor and damaging 4 cables, and that rerouting traffic through alternative paths led to speed and capacity constraints. These kinds of incidents show one thing: you don't necessarily need special technology to break undersea infrastructure. Sometimes one wrong anchor movement is enough, but the result lands on governments' desks. Was this an accident or a signal? The same anxiety has existed in the Baltic as well. In October 2023, investigations into damage to the Baltic Connector gas pipeline and telecom lines focused on details such as anchor marks and drag traces on the seabed. Reuters reported Finland's investigation findings about seabed drag marks and a suspicious tanker. Later, incidents like this even reach legal proceedings. In February 2026, news reported that a captain in a Hong Kong court pleaded not guilty to charges related to damaging Baltic Connector and telecom cables. What stands out here is this: even if the cause begins as an accident, The ending becomes security. States no longer read the cable map as just a telecom map. Now another real limitation. Repairing a cable is not fast. The ocean is huge. Finding the break location, lifting the cable, splicing it, testing it, and lowering it back down takes time. And repair resources are not unlimited. For example, a 2025 bulletin analysis emphasized that the global cable laying and repair fleet consists of 62 ships, that the fleet is aging, and that it is not keeping pace with the growth in cable kilometers. The European Cybersecurity Agency, ENISA, also gives concrete figures. It notes that certain companies collectively maintain about 35 installation ships and 30 maintenance ships. Together, those two facts sound like this. When a cable is cut, the problem is not only data flow, it is restoration speed, and restoration speed becomes strategic advantage in a crisis. And here, the US-China rivalry appears again. What is the supply chain? Who is a trusted vendor? Who receives permits? And where does the route go? For the US side, one of the main motives is building a trusted network circle, minimizing participants considered risky at key endpoints. Team Telecom's PLCN decision was a formalized version of that thinking. For China, cable projects are not only business, they also mean regional connectivity, platform influence, the spread of technological standards, and more alternative routes in a crisis. It is growth and security tied to the same infrastructure. But now comes the most important part of the story. When people hear intelligence in the context of cables, they imagine it like a fantasy film. Yet history has a real example. During the Cold War, the US carried out an operation to tap a Soviet undersea communications line, Operation Ivy Bells. Sources, including a historical article on military.com, state that the device was attached to the cable without piercing it and recorded communications. The exposure of the operation is linked to NSA analyst Ronald Pelton, passing information. The US Navy, CIA, and NSA are named in this context. The message of that historical example for today is simple. An undersea cable is not only an economic artery, it is a strategic object that can be targeted. And this explains why states treat cable routes with such sensitivity. In the world of the 2020s, there is another form of this sensitivity, fragmentation, not one global internet, but gradually trusted circles and excluded circles. The tools are often quiet, permits are delayed, security reviews drag on, routes are changed, landing points shift to other countries. And the results are felt in everyday life, where data centers get built, where latency drops, which market gets cheaper cloud capacity, which country stays more stable during a cut. At this point, the cable map suddenly becomes a national strategy map. Some countries even elevate it into a formal security priority. For example, Financial Times in 2025 wrote that the Japanese government began viewing subsea cables as a national security issue and discussed steps related to cable ship capacity. That means the cable war is not only US, China, Japan, Europe, the Middle East, Southeast Asia. Everyone is competing for restoration power and route diversity. Now I'll give you 3 concrete invisible power mechanisms, and these mechanisms work in the real world. First, endpoint power. Where the cable lands and which station it connects to is where the legal regime begins. As in the PLCN example, some endpoints are considered political risk. Second, redundancy power. When several cables were damaged in the Red Sea, the reason there wasn't total darkness was the escape to alternative routes, but that escape created speed and capacity loss. Third, repair power. The fleet is limited and aging. In a crisis, the question who restores faster becomes strategic advantage. Now combine these 3 mechanisms into one sentence. You choose the cable route, you choose the endpoint chooses the security regime, you choose how many alternative routes exist, and you accept how much repair power is available. That's why in 2026, someone who wants to see the US-China rivalry should not only watch summits, they should watch the quiet decisions. Which cable project got approval? Which landing point changed? Which vendor won the contract? Which region gained a new alternative line? One day you'll see internet slowdowns or unexpected outages in the news, and most people will read it as a technical problem. But behind those problems, there is a script written over years: routes, permits, security reviews, and the repair fleet. The invisible war under the ocean is this: not a war for land, but a war for pathways. For the pathways that carry the world's voice, money, and memory. In the digital era, the greatest power is sometimes not on the screen, but on the map, and that map is under the water.